Okay. Last discussion for today. It's good that we are a small panel. Otherwise, there would have been more of us on the stage than actually watching us. Thanks a lot, Pratik. Thanks a lot, Shantanu. Thanks a lot, Satish, for taking time out to be part of this discussion. It's an extremely interesting and an important subject, inclusive design. And it's certainly a privilege for me to be the moderator of this discussion. So we have a little less than 1 hour for us to have this discussion here. I found the subject extremely interesting because the first question I asked myself was, isn't it very natural? Isn't it obvious? Shouldn't design be inclusive? And how can design be successful without being inclusive? And then I asked myself that, well, in spite of all what seems very obvious, the fact that we are having this discussion means that there somewhere is a bit of a gap between what we design and what we need to design. Okay? And it actually took me back to when I had just started my career, and I had started that in Maruti Udyog Limited then, now Maruti Suzuki. And we used to make a vehicle actually for differently abled people. So there used to be an edition of the Maruti 800, which used to come in some 12 or 13 different variants. And I found that so fascinating that the organization actually took the trouble of identifying, the key disabilities or the key special abilities needed, and they actually made variants of the Maruti 800. And then I left Maruti and I came back after 7 years. I rejoined the organization and that variant was gone. Okay, and my first my obvious question was that why don't we sell that special edition vehicle anymore? And the answer was because it's not feasible. There's no business in it. Okay? And also, I still remember, because I asked my then big boss, Mr. Jagdish Khattar, that even if it is not feasible or viable, why don't we still make it? He said, well, interestingly, the government gives us no incentives. Okay, so here we are actually as a nation, we talk a lot about Atithi Devo Bhava and Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam and all that. But then we actually don't make ramps in our buildings. Okay, we don't have proper ramps in hospitals, right? Our airports are not the most disabled friendly or special application friendly. A lady recently actually collapsed and got injured because she had to wait for a wheelchair in a certain flight for hours. And the wheelchair never came. So somewhere, and that's when I realized that somewhere because of this, this gap of sensitivity in our society in general, and possibly our industry in specific, is the reason why they've asked us to speak on this particular subject. Okay? So Shantanu, I'll start with you, right? How can inclusive design become a core part of your product planning? Okay? And rather than an add-on or rather than an afterthought.
Right. Yeah, first of all, thanks everyone, thanks to Track and Tell for having me here on this panel. And I'm so glad I came. And it's wonderful to meet people from extremely diverse backgrounds, but at the same time, extremely engaging conversations. And I will definitely leave far more enlightened than I started the day today. So, but to answer your question, Avik, so your question was, why is inclusion crucial to the future of?
How can it become a part of your product planning?
Right.
How can it be an integral part of your product planning rather than an afterthought or rather than an add-on?
Yeah, and I think it all boils down to the people. Rather than so if it's just a group of men doing product planning, and product design and product development and engineering, right? that's just not going to help. So you have to have a diverse set of people. If you know for a fact that there is a certain kind of a customer segment that you intend to cater to in the future, you might as well start hiring from people from diverse backgrounds. And that's one thing that a lot of organizations have started doing. But more than just hiring, it's having those people in the team, having those people actually drive decision making, and that's where I would start.
Interesting. I still, quite, it still amazes me that we had the 100cc motorcycles coming out in 1984, 1985, but we had the Sari Guard coming out a good 10 years after the motorcycles came out.
Yes,
Yeah.
true. That, and I mean, there are vehicles that have also kind of catered to. I mean, even now, if you look at the two-wheeler industry, right? I think all of us like have seen that. You'll have a two-wheeler that someone buys, but if there's someone who is differently abled, they can't just use it, so they have to go to a local fabricator to add an additional set of wheels. So there's usually no holistic solution that comes from the OEM's end. And I think this will change. I mean, with the right set of people, to in the right time at the product development process, you bring in, like, hey, like this is a possibility that we should be looking into, and maybe it doesn't take, it doesn't take too much effort, or it doesn't affect you financially as a company during product development if you take a certain decision a certain way, if you enable and unlock this for future customers, right, who are different than your standard customer base.
Very true. Very interesting. On that note, Pratik, I'll come to you. So, because you are a teacher, okay, so how do you inculcate this very core fundamental value of inclusive thinking in your curriculum?
Hello. Yeah, that's I think a very interesting question. First of all, thank you TWF for the invite, and thank you all for bringing me down here and having all these wonderful conversations. A part of design learning or design curriculum, especially from the place I come from, NID, has always been experiential learning. That is not to just teach theory, rather you go out, you experience not just once, because that I've noticed with the current generation also, it takes multiple iterations for students to understand. So first might be the sympathizing part, and then when they go again and see the situation or analyze the particular community they are looking into, then they slowly come down to empathizing, where someone else's pain becomes their pain too. And inherently, I think inclusive design has been a part in the design process as such. But I still feel there is a need, to elevate it to that it should be a checkpoint in every design process that a student does. And in a way, I was just thinking about a project, design project, which the students are currently doing in, and I noticed, thinking about it, or involuntarily when we chose the subjects, we wanted them to look at people in the medical field, especially the elderly people who visit hospitals. Another group was the traffic police, people who stay out in 50 degrees Celsius and then have to shout on top of their voices so as to make people start driving, control it. And so that was the second group. The third group was again looking at Gen Z. So that is more close to their age, probably, the students that we have, on what drives Gen Z or what can we give Gen Z people on. And the fourth group involved, what can we do for people who move loads inside campuses. So it could be a big setting like this. It could be one of the IITs. It could be one of the IT campuses. So I think in a way subconsciously also in the curriculum is pushing in a way to look at very diverse backgrounds of people, and as a faculty we try to push them observe more, be there, empathize, and probably I think for the new generation they might take a little more times that they have to go and observe, so that they understand that we are building for everyone, we have to consider for everyone. And once all these students, four groups, they have come back to the class, then a dialogue starts. And when that dialogue starts, they start comparing, okay, I met this person, he had this issue, I saw this old lady, and I saw this old couple who have been with each other for so long, but they still want to take care of each other, but they are not able to go on a probably a 12-degree incline, which is as per regulation, but still they are not able to reach in this public hospital. So there are provisions, but again, how do we again look to capture these insights, and so that all these solutions that they design or envision, that can be for all of these categories. And I think fortunately it was around this time that I got invited to this event also, which I felt, the jigsaw puzzles just matched, and so I'll be taking a lot of insights that I got from the discussions that happened in the morning, and especially this one, to my students. I hope it captures it. Your question.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you said something very important. You said that you need to design for all. And Satish, I come to you on that because you've been this very active practitioner for all these years. Obviously previously working with Tata Elxsi and now running your own design firm. And we typically suffer somewhere from this dilemma of one size, wanting to have one size that fits all. Okay, especially when you see global launches happening in India, it's like whatever is launched in Germany or whatever is launched in possibly even in Japan or in Korea comes to India with the least possible modifications or adaptations to the Indian requirement. Okay, now given your experience, how do you drive this basic sensitivity in your clients that you cannot have just one solution fitting all requirements? You need to have solutions for every specific application or every specific customer type.
Yeah. Good evening, all. So, this is a very sensitive topic. From decades, we are all working on MVP, minimum viable product. So, here there are certain, let's say, technology disruptions happened, especially the form factor of EV. Driving an EV or managing an EV with disability is easy. Coming from a point where an engine has gear shifter and you have to do a lot of, let's say, activity with hand and legs, everything. So, but right now, I'm very positive about inclusive design. Like Shantanu has mentioned that include different, let's say, stakeholders into the design process and checking with ergonomics. Technology can bridge whatever the exteriors designs are all constraints. That constraints are actually taken over by technology. One example, it was very linked to very emotions right now is when I was working in Europe, I was traveling in the buses to the, let's say, to the daily to the office. So once I saw a small dog and a fat woman who is actually trying to go and board the bus. I was just looking at the bus like whether she will carry this puppy on her hand and get into the bus. But to my amazement, the driver has switched on one switch. The entire air suspension has drowned, and then the vehicle has come almost like 1 inch or 2 inch to the ground. And the small dog just hopped. I'm talking about a dog, which is also taken care in design, not even like humans. So this I was observing, and back in Hyderabad, me and my mom are going for a function where she had or some expensive sari, and all our buses are generally a truck chassis, and she is trying to board from the front because in it is like from the front it's women and from rear it is men. It's like that in city buses, and somebody accidentally put. Leg on her sari, and there are aluminum beadings in that. So it got stuck, and she was so upset. Driver is upset on her. Why you are making rukos? And I was not knowing. So where there is a big gap where a small animal is taken care in design, and even humans are not treated like that. So there is a big difference. I'm talking about that MVPs. But today, I'm so glad that government, especially JNNURM, they have created a bus code where a wheelchair come directly into it, and these air suspensions are very much there. So with a decade passing on, even in personal vehicles like in cars and even in scooters, you can add a lot of value. This actually changes a lot for a disabled person. In Swiggy and Zomato also, they have created some kind of let's say contraptions where a person can deliver. So now this inclusion is a must. I can say it is a must. It will give independence to a person who is disabled, and also gives a kind of an opportunity to interact with the world in a different form. Like you are always confined to some area, like you're saying that ramps are not made and all those. These are mandatory in the building. Right now, the new India should look for technology in creating versions. For it should not be a version as a disabled version. If you say like it will be an aesthetic really good, as designers we can solve that problem. It can be used by anybody. It's not only disabled, it can be used by ordinary person also. It can be a reverse trike kind of thing rather than a trike which is added 2 more wheels. So these are all coming to my mind, where the future looks like more inclusive, and it is enforced with rules, like government or in let's say other bodies can also help in doing it. Public, definitely public vehicles like trams, metros and everything should be taken care, and it is already taken care in a lot of things. But when it comes to private sector, where driven from price points, whether adding something is always price, but at the end of the day, the design can solve that problem. We can reduce the price by innovation or using the technology or creating a space. In fact, you're talking about 90s, where all bikes are generally male dominated. The moment that Kinetic Activa has come, you can see so much of independence for female, and at the same time it is not a female product, it is a unisex product, and that has driven to today's scooter revolution. On par with bikes, these scooters are actually in volume right now. Unfortunately, Bajaj exited that time, but on volume with them, and also it is thriving business for both men and women. It is more inclusive design for me as a two-wheeler than only pure bike form. These are my thoughts.
Absolutely. What you said is so right. So I remember when I just started working and the Kinetic Honda DX was launched, so and it was a gearless scooter, right? And what people thought, so this was interesting. There was one part of my friend circle which said, this is so sissy. Okay, there's another part of my friend circle said, this is just so sassy. Okay, because it's so easy for me, it's convenient. Okay, and that is what I guess inclusiveness or incorporating inclusiveness as integral into your entire product description and product planning is in the context of our industry. Coming back to you, Shantanu, given the fact that you guys are about scooters, okay? Now, while you guys get a kick out of the fact that from a red light my scooter zips off faster than a motorcycle, okay? Now, how do you use research? How do you use what we have nowadays like insight groups and so on, to actually give you the right kind of insights which help you already design in inclusiveness in your products?
So Yeah, that's first of all, you like how how you, let me get back to one, beyond, before even how, what you're trying to gain out of it, right? I think so. The basic set of questions that are asked to, say, a potential group of customers for the future, right? Or even the basic set of insight that are to be gained. So I think what insights to gain itself becomes a big, and I can lack of empathy, because everyone who's, say, if you're designing for women, if you're designing a vehicle that is meant to be unisex, but then the people putting all the questionnaires together are just men, right? And or so it's, I think that is one. But I think from a getting the right kind of data, just to answer your question about how, getting I think if we take a data driven approach where to disprove any suppositions that are previously made, about the importance of a certain, say, ergonomic factor, like the right seat height or the right handlebar width. So I think focusing on getting as much data as possible. First of all, India itself is a diverse country, and like every state, there are people of different sizes. There are demographic differences, there are geographical differences, and of course there are physiological differences. Um, so getting as much data as possible, which is more objective, rather than just relying on subjective. I don't think that person looks uncomfortable, you know. Rather than that, but actually going, and understanding how they use a vehicle, seeing how they use, observing, following them, and these are things that are done in the industry, where you actually live a day in the life of a user with them. So you actually realize how this person starts their day, how this person drops their kids to school, how this person parks their vehicle, and how this person even like goes and buys groceries, or how this person goes to office. And these are invaluable, but you have to get this, in an amount that can give you enough objectivity.
Right, right. What you said is so true. And you also mentioned about this thing about, how do you adjust ride heights? How do you adjust, the movement of the handlebar, and whether it goes back and front and back, whether it goes up and down, all those. So Pratik, coming to you, when you teach your students, and also for you as someone who's a teacher and who's also thereby constantly learning yourself, uh, we always somehow take pride in this concept called jugaad, okay, which really irks me a lot, because a jugaad is basically an afterthought, right? And it is a patchwork. A jugaad is not a viable business solution. Okay, however much some of our key industrialists might be fascinated about jugaad, but I am not. So, for you as a teacher, and also for you as a learner in parallel, what do you think are the methods by which you can actually bring in this certain level of modularity in vehicle design, okay, which allows for a simple vehicle in its modularity being far more sensitive and inclusive to different kinds of users and applications?
This is, I think, very very interesting, because the term jugaad often or very often comes up in each design project, or each project, when students are saying, especially they come up with a presentation showing, okay, jugaad, see how they have done, how some of them have solved. Okay, they have solved their problem. So you have a, I would say, you have a certain amount of learning to take away from that, because those are people facing real issues, trying to solve them, probably with a band-aid, I could say, rather than welding. So one method in which we try to get around it is that, to tell students, and for myself, to identify, okay, that is a real issue, and if multiple people are doing that, it is probably because something like that doesn't exist, or such a solution is not there. So you need to identify that and not just replicate that, but just go into why that person did such a process. And as a designer, how do you creatively think within your boundaries and within probably the what the hard points that that person had, so as to create a new solution for that. And again, I would like to take a step back and also look at a process where I would say it's something called co-design, where we design with the actual people. So you or it, I think in a way it is also called as participatory design, where you bring them into studio, or you take the studio to them. And I think in India probably that is one way it works, where you take the studio to your user, and from that gain real insights. And however, I don't know, this could be a bit of negativity from my side, because how much ever we try to empathize with a different person, it never goes to the 100%, right? So in that way, the best thing to do is bring that person in, let them design or let them be a part of the process, and include all of them. And let's say, for example, I'm creating a chair with 3 levels of height adjustment or depth adjustment, and I bring in 5 people from very diverse backgrounds, let it be socioeconomic, let it be abilities, and tell them to make adjustments for their ideal chair. I'm sure I'll get minimum 10 or 15 adjustments in that. And probably at that point, before the student goes to, or we as a team go to design that product, if we are able to capture these insights and then probably make this product, then it becomes more inclusive. I wouldn't say 100% inclusive, because that is very difficult, but it would become that much more inclusive, so that everyone gets to use it, and the completeness of that design and the thought goes into it. So I believe that is one of the strategies we can use, and probably bring down jugaad in a way. And I also feel sometimes the people who invent these jugaads are also designers from their own point of views. It's just that probably the methodologies and other things are, they do it in a way they understand. And so it is again, I feel a responsibility as designers, as mentors, to subject these to the students and next generation, and tell them to take it up as a challenge, and do the right thing. I believe that's somewhere close.
Yeah, I mean, what you said is so true. It's actually about this entire thing of co-designing, co-creating. And Shantanu, you wanted to say something.
I think the only thing I wanted to say was how I resonate with the misuse of the use of jugaad as and the celebration of the term, and a lot of it is born out of people not getting the right kind of functionality out of what they currently have, and them having to creatively find a way around it. So I think the celebration that needs to be done is of the creativity, the absolute creativity, and the thought process of and the sheer will to make something your own, but not make it as something that has to be done, or something that has to it can't supersede, or it can't replace a well thought out process of defining something that really means something for the end user. Phone mounts on motorcycles, where yes, which is it's necessity from a navigation point of view. But then, if your motorcycle had inbuilt navigation, would you then need that phone mount for anything else? And I think these are the questions, basic questions that usually have been getting asked, and which is why you'll see TFTs on scooters, and of course, cars have solved that a long time ago. But even two-wheelers kind of now just get all that in place from the beginning.
Continuing this line of thought, Satish, given again your very interesting experience of when you're converging engineering with design. Okay, in in the projects that you've done for so many different kinds of organizations, what according to you are the typical misconceptions that organizations have on this concept called inclusive design?
See, basically at Advantage, we do the design research for observation, conceptual design, engineering, and prototyping. When organization comes to us, they also come with a pre-determined kind of, let's say, well-laid brief, or they have a vision that I want to develop something like this. A startup comes like that, and a OEM comes that we already had this entire product. Management team has come up with this kind of specification, you have to do it. So when they come with pre-existing thoughts, you have to do your research in depth, and your observation has to have facts and figures in order to counter them if you are convinced that this is the best way to do. Because our success is in our customer success. And one of the case, one manager has asked, if I come 6 months down the line, will this design change? I said, obviously it will change. The current design is with the current benchmarking or the current trend in the market. In yesteryears, years, 4-5 years, it is to take for a change of something. But today, within 6 months, you can change. You can see the change with a lot of innovations being carried out. So when these organizations come with certain type of, let's say, requirements, but generally we work with a creative team or engineering team, they are flexible. If we suggest something good, they take it, because that obviously converts into business value, because the idea has got a potential innovation or a kind of, let's say, seep through the management actually thinks like the external experts have suggested this, and they may take some time, but ultimately like the ideas are so profound and so good, and it has got an edge on competition and has innovation value and doesn't have much price, let's say, value to it. In the sense like it is so costly, then obviously things will cut down. But ultimately are taken into the stride for design and development. But here is the rider that it has to be proven. So basically, you take guidance from the existing, let's say, rule book of vehicles, and then if you want to do any attachment, whether it is safety point of good or not, so you do this. Here the word jugaad, see, here I can say that jugaad in a right way is actually making use of existing components and showcasing your idea, but this is not for actually selling. It is for proving your ideas. So that is good for jugaad. But somebody who made a jugaad, you have to see that idea is really good in a way that this kind of, let's say, prototypes we make to convince the customer that this is good for this thing and to you and the market. And more importantly, I will say for my team, fundamentally we are designing for a user, not for the customer alone. If the user is going to pick and choose this option, or if a user is happy with this, and the user has got some problem is solved, in the sense like it's a convenience, it's a time, or it's a material issue is solved, then automatically the OEM will buy into it, or a startup will buy into it, and there is a success. In that way, I say even the customer comes with some restrictions, with our design process or with our team, maybe like 20-30% we add. I want to say that because not all the ideas will go through. There will be some incremental design and disruption. Disruption in once in a blue moon, incremental every time, every project. Even I can say received product in the market, after 2 years it requires a facelift. So in those areas you don't see a lot of challenge for this thing, but we will know what to do in that. It's as a professional, we know that we have a window of this much of, let's say, budget, window of this much of time, and these are the pain points. This product doesn't have, competition has. There are certain IP which is competition having, so you have to bypass an IP. So all these things itself is a big project. It's not, I'm not saying that incremental thing is a small project. It is successful in that way, but when there is a disruption, then it is a collaborative approach. Nobody can dictate. any disruption in the market. And when it comes purity of thought with gap finding, as many of these experienced people are here. So once you get that eureka moment, then nothing will stop. Like everybody will be after that to make things happen. That's my take on this.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you call them the eureka moment, or you call them the moments of truth that actually hit you, and they teach you a lot. I'll just share a recent example. I was chatting with a friend of mine who works actually for a Chinese automobile company. He's a head of design there. The company's name is Zeekr. Okay, and they've designed this very interesting MPV called the Zeekr Mix. Okay, and it's become quite a rage when they showed it at the CES, because all the 4 seats can swivel all around, right? And I told him that, okay, this is interesting because it's become a huge hit, and but what made you have all the 4 seats do a full swivel? So he said, listen, we planned to do only the front seats. Okay, then this entire thing of costs came up. So we said, okay, listen, let's have all the 4 seats swiveling. Right, so the same technology that we use only for the front seats, we just do double the volume. Okay, but what happens is in that due course, it becomes a special feature, right? So you can actually sit, facing each other, facing the road when you're driving and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so feasibility becomes very important, yes. But then, as you correctly said, if it's a more collaborative approach, then the feasibility issues can actually be worked out. Any example that you would want to share with us, Shantanu, on this? Given that you've spent 11 years with what was once a startup and now is almost a benchmark, any examples you would want to share of where you overcame these aspects of feasibility, but incorporated specific elements of inclusive design?
Yeah, I think overcoming aspects of feasibility. One, of course, at Ather, the one thing that happened was we had to build the entire vehicle from scratch. So feasibility was a question everywhere, on every single part of the vehicle, and that's where it started. And of course, it had to be done from scratch because we found that there was no other way to do it. We couldn't just build a battery pack for existing vehicles, or we couldn't, just build, so that was where we started. I think there are places, wherever feasibility came up as an issue, right? If the solution was right, everyone in the company, right from not just design and product management to engineering, everyone rallied behind it, with a single-minded mission. And I think the benefits of us being a far smaller company, at that point was such that everyone rallied behind it, and we were able to. So I think, and one such decision, of course, was how making sure that what happens on your screen, what happens. So now that we didn't have a conventional speedometer console, but we had a TFT touch screen there, right? So making sure that you maintain the right kind of contrast, the right kind of legibility, readability, and bringing in the right kind of talent to work on these areas. When you say design a sound for a vehicle that is essentially silent, how do you kind of even go to the depth of sound design where it is even for, say, other people on the road, when you have the opportunity to create a new indicator buzzer sound which you can switch on or off, now that everything is digital and controllable by you. How would you design that sound? And how would you design it from the point of view of making sure that it's not jarring to people on the road like any other buzzer beeper, but also cuts through traffic noise and everything. So I think a lot of these thoughts kept happening. Of course, the vehicle itself lends to a very conventional, regular, everyday user base. From an inclusivity standpoint, there are things that we made sure that it didn't jar people who use the vehicle. It didn't jar people who don't use the vehicle out, beyond this thing. One thing, of course, that I remember very well is the switchgear layout on the handlebar is the exact same in terms of its positioning of all switches and usability as a standard petrol scooter, on the first scooter that we made. And the reason for this was we were making a new product, right? And there is a steep uphill battle in terms of making this a compelling product for a user who has previously not used this product. Now, when the switch happens from, for someone to from an ice scooter to an EV scooter, would you want something that technically might be better, but then it takes a steep learning curve, and that alienates that end customer, and that user. So we've had to carefully bring in, generation by generation, changes to the switchgear, which are still, are rooted in that original thought of, you being able to switch between, say an EV and an ICE vehicle, so that you don't, you are safe, and you and your passenger are safe, and everyone else on the road is safe, so that your indicator is right where it needs to be. There is no, even though we had the opportunity, certain things need to be taken forward with care.
Yeah, this is so interesting because again, such an interesting example of inclusive design where what you're saying is when you're actually helping your user or your owner actually transition from one technology to the other. Okay, you are not trying to overburden the person, okay, with just bells and whistles just for the sake of it. Okay,
Yes.
so this is again a very, very high level of sensitivity. Pratik, coming to you, when a vehicle doesn't exist in isolation. Okay, there's entire ecosystems around it, the infrastructures around it, and our infrastructure, though it's improving, is still a long, long way to go. Right, even in the best of the cities that we have in our country, the infrastructure in that very city is also not predictable. There'll be some areas where it'll be very good. There'll be some areas where it'll be really bad. Okay. So how again, as NID, as an institution, okay, which leads so much of thought in all these aspects of transportation, okay, how do you plan to bring in inclusiveness into the infrastructure that is built around the vehicles that we use?
I would like to address this question from, let's say, another project perspective itself, because I think while students come in as young learners, the first thing they might make a simple product. Second, a little more complex thing, which might be a motorized mall transport. But the third level that we have is something called systems design, and it's a pretty long course, and that is where we sensitize the students that you are looking at it from a very over the earth vantage point, like a bird's eye view, of the whole system. So you are not looking at a bus or a bus stop or an auto rickshaw or a two-wheeler in isolation, but you are looking at the whole transportation system. And in this approach is a lot uh, a lot of observations and a lot of research, secondary, primary, and students usually go where you have one of the best of uh, transportation systems available in India. For example, right now, one group was looking into the transportation between tier 1 and tier 3 cities. So they were looking at Ahmedabad, Gandhinagar, and also towards the Surat side and along the coast. And another group was looking into the water transportation, and they are right now in Kochi. So the idea here is to look at every aspect of probably how a person travels from their home, takes the first transport, and for taking the first transport, how does she uh, arrive at the location, and what kind of a bus stop is it, what kind of a metro station it could be, or a metro train station could it be, and seeing how these nuances could all be optimized so that they become seamless. There is also the multimodality of all this transportation modes existing together, but from a customer or a user point of view, they have uh, a seamless operational utility of the whole system. And this is where also they look into the inclusivity part. How does a school going child, go from their home to the school, and does he or she travel with their parents? If their parents are going, do they go in a two-wheeler, or are they going in a three-wheeler? What kind of paths or what kind of roads do they encounter? So a big process of the whole module or course is understanding the system. And mostly what happens is when they understand the system, then they come to a point that, okay, nothing can't be done right now because it's very complex. And that is when we say, okay, right now you have reached a point where you can look into what small change can they do so that a small change can affect a very large population. And I think inclusivity becomes very important at that point, and it is also one of the driving factors where it forms, probably I would say, a very high percentage of what their proposed solution could be. And coming from the transportation department, I would not say that we would always go into product. So we have few students who are looking into eVTOL services around Mumbai. So for them, when they met the officials, they said they were impressed with how they showcased it. So they told the students to come up with your version of the policy or your version of the advice that how can these things be done. So it, as a design solution, it can be anywhere from a product to a service or even a policy level or recommendations. And I think that is where it plays into inclusivity and learning and integration into all of this. So yeah, that's my take.
Satish, you want to add something?
Yeah, so here, private and public. So two aspects. Private, we have done some surveys in this area, where if you see, especially the Europe, there is a large network of trains, buses. Public transport is relied much on. Where in India, like your own vehicle is relied much on. It's actually a cultural factor, because we don't plan a day. There's a lot of disruptions happen during the work, and you need to do some unplanned things in the evening and to get these things, that thing for the home, or drop your friend here and there. So we are more adapted to have your own product, which is actually a two-wheeler. Two-wheeler is a boon to Indian population. If there's no two-wheeler, like a lot of mobility is, let's say, taken this thing. So when an average person in Europe is relying on public transport, because they are planning a day, even their outings are planned in such a way that time they will get their own car. Car is a mode of transport there, but it is expensive when compared to this. Here, two-wheeler is cheaper, and with EV it is much more better. But where this inclusivity is, if you can drive our population with reliability in our public transport services, and also inclusivity for everyone, and also at the same time that last mile connectivity, what he was saying, when a person actually reaches home or starts from home, that connectivity is figured out, and many startups are doing here. Whether it will be a service-based e-rickshaws in Delhi, which is popular, which I say is a very good last mile connectivity, which has not very much replicated in the south or in other places. But we see that this can be a model where it is affordable transport, where in India it drives a kind of a growth, that the more mobility is actually growth and prosperous. By the way, if you're just sitting at home, it's not prosperous. So here I want to add that private is taken care in India. The public systems need to upgrade. What, let's say in NID also they teach is different touch points, where whether you are waiting at a bus station, the information you require, what is the next bus are coming and where is then bottleneck is happening. Today the technology can solve these issues and push, or let's say attract people to use public service transport, and thereby it is actually good for economy also, in a way that it reduces burden on the let's say other infrastructure that is to be needed. That I just wanted to add.
Yeah, what you said is so important, because that entire ecosystem, unless we put focus on the entire ecosystem, the specific parts of the ecosystem also don't grow. Okay, and talking about public transport, well, I guess we are currently at a situation where our bus penetration is just 1.6 people per thousand, 1.6 buses per thousand people. Okay, and it is, I think, it's a matter of shame for us as a country which admits to the fact that we are a poor country, but still, even today, close to 35 million people walk to work. Okay, they don't have a mode of public transport. That's where we are, which is where inclusiveness has to play such a crucial role. And you're right, because though I'm a Bengali, but I haven't spent much time in Kolkata. But Kolkata to me is a very unique city which actually mixes road, train, water to actually move. So if I have to go to Howrah station and I live in Kolkata, I can actually take a bus or I can take a taxi, get off at a particular spot, take a mini bus, go to Babughat, take a ferry to cross the river, go to the other side, and then take a three-wheeler and go to Howrah station. I can do that. You also took a very interesting example of Delhi, because I was personally involved with the previous government in working out its multi-mobility solutions, where they created this concept called the Mohalla bus. The Mohalla bus was that very idea, where you have the main bus network, then you have the Mohallas. Okay, so if you stay in the inside of Nazafgarh, your DTC bus will not reach there, but you get off at the DTC bus stop. The Mohalla bus takes you closer to home. From there, if it's a nice winter day, you can walk home, or you can take an electric three-wheeler and reach home. The idea was as to how we can have one card, one mobility card, where you could put some money in that card, and currently you're using it in the Delhi metro. The idea was to link it, the metro, link DTC, link the Mohalla bus, and also at some one stage link all the three-wheelers in the city. Okay, before we wrap up, just 5 minutes. Before we wrap up, I'll start again with you, Pratik. 2 things that you would do yourself as a teacher in bringing in greater inclusiveness in mobility.
This is again coming back to probably co-design, where I would bring people from diverse backgrounds, make them visit the studios or make them come into the classroom and ensure that students spend quality time, not just within the project, but also hearing them out, hearing their thoughts, and figuring out. So that is one thing that I definitely would love to do, so that on that it also touches a lot of empathy, but also on terms of inclusivity, and in terms of process also, how can you understand from a person, because this actually happened to me also. I was teaching and I went to one of the design studios where a head nurse had come, and she said, I had taken care of more than 1,000 deliveries, and during my time I have ensured that nothing has happened to a patient ever. And we were all so impressed by the stories that she had to say, and it shook me and my colleague by surprise, like, why aren't we inviting? And the next thing we did was like, tell her, please you come to the class. So yeah, that is one thing. Did you ask for 2?
Yeah, 2. So co-design is 1.
Co-design is one. Another term in terms of inclusivity is probably always having a checkbox in all of the processes that you do, that whether it be in the thinking stage, whether it be it in the model making stage, or anywhere possible, have inclusivity as a main checkbox that you have to deliver, even when you are giving a presentation, for example, or like a project showcase. So yeah,
so these 2 things from your end. So co-design and checkbox. Shantanu, 2 things.
Inclusivity in vehicles, from the word go, right? Yeah, I think he's put it beautifully. You know, there's and it also applies to industry, where inclusivity as a parameter to be not only, you know, written down as a, you know, as one of the things to look into, but also deliver on, you know, and at every stage of the you know, the product design development process, right from the initial idea of that product to the end deliverable, you know, when it rolls off the assembly line, you know, and it reaches the hands of customers. Even like, I think it could even go down to the extent of how does a customer say, you know, walk into your experience center, your showroom. How does the customer uh, what does the customer expect when they take it to a service station, right? Does a service station feel while, you know, like, as a man, I'll just go take my vehicle to service, I'll just drop, I'll just but does it feel safe to everyone? You know, does it feel safe to uh, a woman? Does it feel safe to a younger person? You know, or does it feel you know, welcoming to an older person? I think all these have to be, you know, thought through at every single stage. um,
Yeah, so okay, two things from your end: parameter, being a parameter, and the customer experience that you
yeah,
create.
I mean, at every single touch point.
Absolutely.
Vehicle,
Satish,
product, ecosystem.
two things that you would do.
For inclusive design, see, one is definitely focusing on user needs and projecting with business needs. And second thing is overcome a fear of failure. Mostly designers don't push the ideas because it will be rejected by management. Anyway, it's okay, but still is for a better inclusivity for larger population. Let us fail, but these ideas will be heard after some time. Maybe not in this product, maybe in the next product it will come. So my two things are focus on user needs, aligning with business leads. Second is overcome the fear of failure in at least proposing the ideas and solutions.
Okay, so two things from you: aligning user needs with business needs and overcoming our fear of failure. Well, we have run out of time. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, Prateek,
Thank you.
Shantanu, Satish. Just to sum up again, once again, for all of us in the room, the need to co-design, the need to always you have a checkbox whenever you are designing any kind of a mobility solution, whether a product or an application or a solution or the ecosystem, to have it as a parameter in what you do, to take care of all the touch points in the customer experience, which is pre-sale, sales, after sales, even resale, okay, everything. To bridge the user needs with the business needs. And lastly, all of us together need to overcome our fear of failure. Thank you once again. Do we have time for questions? No. Yeah, we do? Okay, good. So if anybody has any questions, most welcome. Yes, sir.
So my question is for two different segments. One is for two-wheelers and one is for three-wheelers. For two-wheelers, when we talk about design inclusivity, are we talking about gender-neutral designs for vehicles? Because those are different, clearly two different product markets. One is male-dominated, one is female-dominated, one is because of the way that the vehicle are supposed to be driven. Number two is for three-wheelers, when we talk about design inclusiveness, are we also considering patients, older people who can't get into a rickshaw in the time of emergency? Not everybody can afford an ambulance when it comes. Do we also want to target that when we talk about design inclusivity?
Thanks. So I'll talk about two-wheelers first. So while you said, you know, like, there could be a segment of the two-wheelers, you know, industry that caters to, I mean, products that cater to a far more male audience, and there's a product, there could be a set of products that cater to an audience comprised majorly of women. But one other, you know, important factor that of course, I've personally learned over, you know, like at least a decade and a half in industry, is that India is a country with a very strong set of family values, and the family unit is very strong, right? And a majority of the country, you know, a large majority still lives in joint families, where it could be one scooter that or say 2 scooters, but the same exact thing that has to serve a multitude of people in the family, right? And that's where there are products that exist in the market for family segments that do a wonderful job of catering to almost everyone in the family. So it could be someone who might be in like early 50s or late 40s, who and that person's spouse, and it could be their kid who might be learning to ride a two-wheeler, might be 16 or whatever, and it could also serve maybe the grandpa might just take it for a quick go meet his friends in the park, right? So I think that is a large majority of the market. Scooters are majorly unisex. Some scooters, of course, one good example that comes to mind is the TVS Scooty Pep, right? So which was specifically designed for young women to get into two-wheelers, and they did a great job of that. Yes, so but some segments don't lend themselves, but I think as we as the two-wheeler segment in the country becomes more and more evolved, right? As it evolves, right, I think there will be a need for bikes to cater to everyone, which not all bikes do, right? Like there are basic commuters that by virtue of their size, their engine size leading to the vehicle size and lightness, cater to a larger variety of people, both men and women and older people. But I think going forward, there'll be, definitely an ask from, as the market has evolved, a need for performance bikes to cater to women. I think if you look at Europe, right, there, there are people who used to ride, who have been riding two-wheelers for the past, since they were teens. And now that age group, that user group is possibly 55, 60, but they still want bikes. But what they now go for is possibly a sport tourer, which has performance but offers an extremely comfortable riding position, so that your back and arms are they're not strained, and you can go for, or like you can cross an entire country on those, or maybe possibly a continent. So that's the two-wheeler side of things.
Yeah, the short answer is yes. Like design inclusivity, there is called design exclusivity also. Like there are certain bikes, sport bikes, only with only one person drives it. There's no pillion rider to it. So design, the purpose of the product. You mentioned about auto rickshaw. There's a very good example. Many people will use it, and especially if ambulance is not there, it's a good. Even I think Mr. Khan, he was stabbed. He was also taken in auto rickshaw to this thing. So if you see that product definitely required design inclusivity, and as a designers, we need to put thought like how easily like old age person or somebody in emergency can rush into this thing. But if you talk about scooters, bike, the purpose is different. You need to add all the unisex products with an idea of a challenged person also using it. That is a good way to start with. But not every product you impose all these ideas is not going to work. It's like somewhere down the line, the auto is a good example. Those things are definitely to be touched, and from anybody is listening to this conversation, definitely can look at design inclusivity and redesign the auto in a much more better format. That is my take.
Just a small point I would also like to add to this conversation, because as we are saying, something that was like the Scooty Pep or the Activa I, because it was designed keeping into mind the women, it has also catered to another segment of men also. So that is where once you create certain products which might not be bought by the target audience, but that creates an accessibility where someone else looking for similar things could actually buy it. So that's, I think, a part where accessibility also comes into play, and inclusivity also in this way. While, or sometimes you might think, okay, I'll create a ramp and for people who are differently abled, but I have also seen myself right now using the ramp more than taking the steps sometimes. So once you design for inclusivity or accessibility, in a way it becomes easier for everyone, or at least a majority of us, to use it. So that's another tangent to that.
I'm sorry, and thanks for that. And I'm sorry, I'm just at the risk of extending this conversation and making everyone wait. Just gonna add one example that I've always liked, which is completely non-automotive, but it's one of my favorite things. So, of course, I'm not very young, you know. I'm so yeah. 1 second. So sorry, just done. So I come from a time when like computers. I was a teen, and then computers were still new. Personal computers at home, right? But we got one, and my dad would use it for his office. I would play on it. I would use Photoshop and all that. And then we tried to get my mom to use it. Okay, and then she did use it for a while, and then she just like didn't want to use it after that. It was a typical PC, right? Cut to 20 years later, not 20, not even like 15 odd years later, she has a smartphone which she uses far more than any of us in the family ever do, and she utilizes it to the max. So she messages her old friends, I mean, of course, on WhatsApp. She finds recipes, and then she gets ebooks and music and all that. And so basically it wasn't her fault that she couldn't use the computer. It was the format of the product which didn't lend itself to her, and now she has a computer in the palm of her hands, right? I mean, that's how I look at it.
Thank you so much, everyone. Can we have a huge round of applause for all the panelists and moderator? Thank you so much, everyone. Such a great sessions we had today.